Welcome to your Best Life podcast, where we help you discover your calling so you can live with purpose and clarity. We're Pete and Julie Morrill, your guides, mentors, and lifelong adventurers, and we're here to help you find your true north. Hello to you. If you're not watching this episode on video today, I hope you're able to hear the paddles slapping in the background. That's Pete playing pickleball with his club friends in Mount Shasta. In today's episode of Your Best Life, Pete and I are going to share the first S in quests, the acronym we use in our coaching and workshops to help you discover your calling. The first S stands for skills and abilities, and Pete has a lot of skill when it comes to hand-eye coordination in athletics. Me, not so much. Balls hate me, actually. But today we're going to share how your skills and abilities can be a clue to your calling. Let's get started. Show me.
This is just to prove to everyone that I am a decent pickleball player, and I'm now turning these back into the club so we can recycle them for other players.
Congratulations, honey.
Thank you, dear. Well, welcome to your Best Life podcast. This is Pete and Julie Morrill. We're aiming to lead you to live your best life.
Yeah.
We're in one of our favorite places, Southern Oregon, Lithia Park in Ashland, Oregon. And we like talking about big things in this park.
Mm-hmm. It seems like we get most of our grand, amazing, inspired ideas from being in this park.
And one of our first dates was in this park as well.
Our very first date was in this park.
Kind of in this park, yeah.
It wasn't Oh, it's because we had our kids with us.
Kids, yeah.
I consider that our first date.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah. You've got some questions.
I do. So today we're talking about the first S in the QUESTS acronym, and that first S stands for skills and abilities. So I have quite a few questions for Pete today. Pete, would you please share a skill or ability and tell us what that is?
Yeah, so a skill and ability kind of in the whole QUEST acronym, it's probably the easiest ones for people to relate to. But I'm going to expand it quite a bit more, because I want you to think not just resume kind of skills and abilities. So those are not inappropriate, right? Some people are managers, and some people are leaders, and some people have a certain typing skill and all that. Those are skills and abilities. But when we think about skills and abilities, I want you to expand it, because we have a lot. In other words, I want you to maybe come up with a list of 100 when you do this, because if you think about it, you have a lot of little things that you do well. So there are big things. So I'm a teacher and I'm a leader. Those are skills, kind of, right? But I'm also good at fly fishing, and I'm good at pickleball, and I'm good at organizing. So I want it to be really expansive. I would love you to include hobbies. I would love you to include fascinations, and think about, am I in the top 25% in this particular area?
But what if you can't think of 100 things?
Well, do your best and then come back. But what we're going to do in our little chart is we're going to have you think about segments of your life. So your professional life, your relational life, your hobbies, and your interests. Because some people are just very engaging in conversation, which you wouldn't put that on a resume, but really it is something that you can very much leverage in a work situation. Some people have great social skills, and we always discount those. In other words,
soft skills.
Yes. And I used to tell our whitewater rafting guides, I'm going to give you the skill of whitewater rafting, but this is only because you're going to have to not think about that when you have 6 people in your raft and you're really entertaining them through conversation, the soft skills. So we call it hard skills, soft skills. And I think in skills and abilities, that's a very real thing to think about. And probably women are going to focus more on soft skills or have more natural soft skills, and men are going to always think about hard skills. but we would love both of those to have an
We need
interplay.
both.
Yeah, yeah. So when you think about skills and abilities, what comes first to your mind?
Well, I actually am kind of wondering what's the difference between a skill and ability versus a gift.
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's our second S, right? In the quest, that's our last
Our
one,
last S,
and
yeah.
we call the gifts selfless gifts.
Mhm.
So I want you to put a pin in that, and now I'm going to talk about something that I'm skilled at, and then something that is a gift.
Mhm.
I think I'm a skilled teacher, and in some ways, I am teaching right now and using that skill because I'm fairly organized and I'm fairly good at explaining concepts to people and how those concepts
And you're
interact.
good at public speaking.
Correct.
I am when it comes to a class of 30 kids, and that's it. After that, I get nervous.
And I think when you say I'm good, you're saying I'm confident in
Right, right.
in public
Okay, I
speaking.
probably could be good at speaking to a larger group, but if I think of you guys as being only 30 people, or right now we have 25 people watching or listening, yay, that's right in my sweet spot. Any more than that, I might get nervous.
Well, and just this morning we heard somebody that wasn't.
Mhm.
She's the spouse of a very skilled
Pastor,
speaker,
our pastor,
confident,
yeah.
and she was not very confident, but because she had relational
Yeah.
skills, um, I would guess that she was more effective than he was this morning. When we heard them both speak, she
Yeah.
gave a little bit of her life story. She wasn't
Yeah.
teaching as much as she was sharing, right?
Sharing her heart.
Right. So, and that's a great example of the difference between a skill and an ability.
Yeah.
Somebody that can
Well,
teach.
skill and a
I'm
gift.
sorry, yeah, a
Okay,
skill and a selfless gift.
gotcha.
Somebody that can teach can lay out the foundation of whatever it is they're explaining. They have perhaps historical background, they have a knowledge of the subject, they have a confidence in terms of organizing it. Perhaps they've got a PowerPoint presentation. You would say, they're a skilled teacher. But do they have the gift of teaching? The gift of teaching is something where they feel so strongly about not just what they're teaching, but who they're teaching to, that they're going to think about the kid that's super anxious in the class. They're also going to think about the kid that sits in the back and is very disengaged generally. They're going to think about what is creative ways that I can get people to interact with the subject. They're going to think about not the depth of what they're teaching, but they're going to think about the depth of what is being understood. And I think most teachers would do better to say, I'm not going to explain as much as I'm going to get them to be engaged with more. So creativity, discussion, interaction, debate, object lessons, all of those things point to me to somebody who is a gifted teacher because they're thinking about who they're giving it to as much or more
than the content,
than what they're giving. I think the skill of teaching, that person focuses on the content.
Yeah.
The gifted teacher focuses on the connection.
Before you go on, though, I just want to say I do have, I think, not only the skill of teaching, but also a gift of teaching because I am really passionate about reaching my students in my classroom, not just to give them, just stuff their brains with a bunch of facts.
Information.
It's important because they have to take a test and get all these things right and before they can move to their next grade level. But I actually have found I don't get them to learn unless I make that connection with them first. And how I do that is through a lot of creativity. So in my teaching style, it's really creative. Lots of dressing up in costumes because I teach history, or listening to audiobooks because I also teach English, and just all kinds of bringing speakers into the classroom, taking them on field trips. Okay, I don't need to get into all that, but that's where I'm passionate about giving my gift of teaching and creativity to those students to help them learn. So,
Yeah. So the gift is more comprehensive.
yeah.
In other words, this whole project that we're taking, where we're helping people find their life calling, is a gift, right? We care more about the people and what we're giving them than we are that all of the information has to be 100% thorough and organized and notes are taken and all that sort of stuff. We're wanting to change your life rather than give you more information. We think our society is more over-informed than under-informed, but we think our society is more under-engaged than over-engaged. And if you ever took a seminar from us on this life calling, you're going to find that we're very interested in engagement.
Connecting with you, yeah.
We're going to do facilitated learning much more than we're going to do lecturing.
Yeah. And when we do a workshop for you guys, if you can come with us on a workshop and join us in a workshop, we are really trying to be engaging and creative and having fun with you, because that, for one thing, keeps me from being bored, keeps you from being bored, but it also brings that connection, so we get to know you better and you get to know us better. It's a different dynamic than offering like an online course or learning from ChatGPT or all these other things that I do. Actually, I watch a lot of YouTube videos and I learn a lot. But if you're there in person with somebody in a workshop setting or a retreat setting, it's so different. I'm not saying that you can all come on a workshop with us. It's not possible. So what we're trying to do in this podcast is connect with you in a way that reaches you and connects with your hearts, because this is really important, we think. It made a world of difference to me to know what my calling is so that I can share that gift with you guys. So,
yeah, a skill is to get a job done. A gift changes a life.
I have the skills of putting together these podcasts and just editing the videos and getting them ready for you. That's a skill that I use, as a tool that I use to give you my selfless gift. So back to skills and abilities. I wanted to ask you, Pete, can you have a job that requires you to have a skill, but you may not have the gift for it?
Yeah, and you may not even have the skill for it. In other words, perhaps you're thrown into a job where you're supposed to lead a team, and you're not a natural leader. And so that may not be a natural ability, but then it becomes a learned ability. All right, if I'm a leader, then I need to look at how do they need to be led. And I need to think of, okay, they probably need schedules, and probably they need a little bit of clarity in terms of what's needed. They need parameters. They need to know what the budget is and all that sort of stuff. They may need motivation, all of those things. You may not be a natural, that's not your natural ability, but you can learn. A skill can be more learned than a gift. We talked about the difference between skills and gifts. A skill can be learned. I can learn to fly fish, but I'm not going to have, I've got a friend.
Oh, you need to share that.
Yeah, so I can learn to fly fish, right? That becomes a skill that I learn. And the person that I learned it from has a gift of fly fishing.
Yeah, tell them about Frank.
Yeah, so Frank is my fly fishing mentor. And when we went fly fishing at first, he would catch 10 fish for every one fish that I caught. And I'm not a bad fisherman, but fly fishing was a brand new world to me. And then I started to learn certain things. But what Frank did when he was teaching me is he would stand back and watch me and give me tips and give me encouragement and give me stories and give me all of this. And I think Frank would usually fish, but he would fish far less than I would fish because it was a gift for him. He wanted that skill to be in me, but that's what he cared about the most when we went.
He cared about the connection between his students and him. He's also a teacher.
Yes, he was. He's a retired teacher now, but he has but we taught a fly fishing class together
Right.
after I learned the skill. And believe it or not, I would give the organization to the class, and Frank would give the skill of fly fishing part to it. And we were a good combination because I'm much more organized. I'm a more natural leader than Frank is. Frank has a strong passion for people loving and enjoying the outdoors. And so he would get very engaged when people got their first fish, or that was just exciting to him.
Yeah,
right?
I'm going to add that I have not really, I wouldn't say I've learned to fly fish. I have received a couple of lessons,
Introductory lessons
in fly fishing.
Yeah.
And you taught me.
Yeah.
That was
it lasted about 5 minutes.
It wasn't
maybe.
good because I felt like you're getting impatient with me, or I feel the pressure of it. But when Frank taught me how to fly fish, it was much better. It just went, I felt like I had a connection with him. He was so patient and kind. And so
it was better.
It just went better.
Yeah.
But the combination of you both teaching a fly fishing class was good.
Yeah.
Here is something that I really want to share with you. You may think, okay, I've listed all my skills and abilities. I can't even think of very many. You might want to ask a friend or a family member what some of your skills are that maybe you're not even seeing, because you can have skills that are hidden. Another thing I want to say is you may not even recognize a skill because it doesn't make money. And if you, I have a fault with this. If I have a skill that doesn't make money or couldn't make money, I don't think it's valuable. I devalue it. And so that's one thing that I'm learning is there are a lot of soft skills and other skills that go toward your gift, that build up your gift to give to others. And they don't have to make money, but they can actually contribute to making money. How can you speak to that? How can your skills and abilities?
Let me talk about one thing that I've noticed in you, and we've mentioned it before. You have the ability to connect with people from different cultures or different countries, right? That is not something that you put on the resume necessarily unless you're working with international students, and there's an option to take that skill, that interest, that passion, and monetize it. But most of the time you're not thinking to yourself, oh, how am I going to get better at interacting with international students? You're just going to say, I really love this. You're very curious. You're very naturally curious. Counselors are just deep people that ask good questions. Many people are counselors without having the title of therapist or psychologist, right? Those are people that you just love to spend time with, and they read your emotions and your concerns and your questions. They're going to ask deeper questions. They're going to get you to think about things that you're not normally going to think about. They're going to tie some of your emotions to your past, and they're going to take their natural ability. Maybe they're trained, maybe they're not. To be honest with you, I'd much rather have a therapist that's natural at asking deep questions than I would that's somebody that's trained or technically skilled, right? Or licensed. Licensed is just kind of a joke. It just means that they've checked a bunch of boxes.
They went to a lot of classes.
They went to a lot of classes.
School,
In therapy, they probably have practiced a lot of therapy, but and we're life coaches, right? And you and I approach life coaching differently. You ask more questions. I ask questions deeply.
You are more direct.
You ask the questions that get people thinking, and then I ask the question that gets them to the heart of the matter, and then I make a statement, which they know is true because they've already come to that conclusion through their own, but I've condensed it, right? So they could take it away and say, oh, I'm a contemplative person, or I worry too much about what other people think. I'll say that. You won't say that. You're going to ask them that, right?
Do you think maybe you're...
Yeah.
But what do you think that means for you? I just try not to say it so directly.
Right. And then I'll ask, how come you worry so much about what everybody thinks?
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll hem and haw about that. And I'll say, that's a stumbling block for you to be successful. You've got to be confident in where you're going, not
You should
confident
say this to our audience.
in where everybody else
Yeah.
thinks you're going. That's not the big issue here. So, yeah.
I also wonder if you could speak to how your skills and abilities could be a means to make money and earn a
Sure.
living.
Yeah, I used to always coach about 30 to 40 college students every summer in terms of how to be counselors at our camp. And some of them were doing a variety of different jobs, but most of them are counselors. And I would tell them, if you do anything for 2 years, most people would consider yourself an expert. Okay? And if you think about it, if you really pour yourself into anything, whether it's a foreign language or whether it's typing or whether it's a particular program on your computer or whether it's a hobby like fly fishing or pickleball, pretty soon you're 2 or 3 or 4 chapters ahead of every 90% of the other people. Okay,
that's what a lot of YouTubers do.
Once you're ahead of 90% of the other people, you can probably sell your ability to help those 90% get to where you're at. In other words, I'm a pretty good pickleball player.
Which we saw in the intro.
And in that process, I have started coaching people. And I'm sure now I coach people for free, but I'm sure now I could put my little card out there, Pete's Pickleball, and I'm pretty sure people would hire me to coach them. I've done that with fishing. I've done that with hunting. I've done that with rafting. I've done that with most of my hobbies. You get a little jealous because every time I take on a hobby, I figure out a way to monetize
it. I just don't have the confidence level to say, hey, pay me for this. I just feel intimidated by that.
Yeah.
But you don't.
Yeah, in dog training or speaking or all of those things that I've done, once I focus in on it, usually I have to figure out, here's my little stick when it comes to pickleball, or here's my stick when it comes to dog training.
Yeah.
Then once I get that, it monetizes almost naturally. People, when I first started training dogs, I would just use dogs in talks that I was giving, and I used the dogs as an illustration. Obviously, the dogs had to be obedient and go off of a cue. And I monetized it not only and did it help me promote the camp, that's what I was mainly doing, but then people started talking to me, will you train my dog for me?
Yep.
So that's part of the problem or the challenge of monetizing skills is you have to have a little bit of a platform so people can see that you're skilled.
That's true.
Yeah.
So I just want to say something. This is kind of an relating back to the fly fishing. So if you look and do research online, you will see that being a fly fishing guide is actually one of the highest paying jobs in the world right now. That's insane to me. But it's
the daily take might be.
It is so valuable to people. And so since we're speaking inadvertently, mostly to women, I didn't know that until we did our analytics, but you could learn how to fly fish, use that skill, and teach other fly fishing women, teach other women how to fly fish, because a lot of women won't learn how to fly fish from a man or from their husbands. So I just think even that's a possibility. I know a couple of fly fishing women, anglers, who actually make money doing that.
Well, that's when we are encouraging people to find their calling. We're encouraging them to discover things that they already love.
Yeah.
And then
kind of random things that they
and
wouldn't
then
think.
perhaps monetize it in many ways. This is a little battle that you and I are having in terms of this program. Is I'm less concerned about monetizing it. You would like to monetize it. To be honest with you, it doesn't matter that much whether we get a lot of money or a little bit of money as long as we're doing it passionately. And my belief is if you're doing things passionately, people will see that passion and they'll end up throwing money at you for a number of different reasons. And you need to figure out, okay, is this going to be my profession or is this going to be my paid hobby? I have a lot of paid hobbies. I am really good at taking
Getting people to pay you
taking a
for your
hobby,
hobbies.
investing in it about 2 years, and then I know I'm 2 or 3 chapters ahead of them. That's the thing is also if you're 8 chapters ahead of them, you probably, and many college professors are like this, you're probably teaching way over their head.
Good point.
And so if you want to monetize it, you always have to think about how am I
What's
going
it like to be a
make,
beginner?
yes, how am I going to dumb this down enough that it becomes palatable for a beginner? It becomes inviting for a beginner. And when I started teaching pickleball, I had really literally played pickleball for 9 months. But I'm better than average, and it looks like I've played longer
And I can't
than
hit
that.
a ball.
And I watched some videos and I thought, well, these principles are pretty simple, but most people don't understand these principles. And then I would get 8 or 10 beginning intermediate players, and they all said, I think this is improving my game. I had to teach them the skill, but I also had to teach them the reason for the skill. And most people weren't using the skill very well because they didn't understand the reason for it. And pickleball is a very simple game. Anybody can play it.
So
Most
I can't.
anybody. But
I guess I could if I really tried, but I don't really like any kind of sport that involves a ball, so it's not going to happen.
Pickleball is a very easy game, but it's very got complex strategy.
It takes eye-hand coordination.
90% of the people that play don't play with much strategy, which is okay. They enjoy it without that. And I was equipped to teach those people, oh, if you put a little bit of more strategy into your game, you'll be a lot more effective. So, yeah.
Pete, how do your skills and abilities provide clues to your calling? And how can our audience's skills and abilities provide clues to your calling?
Yeah, so if you're looking for how your skills and abilities relate to your calling, it's the most scattered one of all of the 5 things that we're going to dig into about your personality. In other words, we want you to come up with 100. You're not going to have 100 callings. But the reason we want you to do that is we want you to unearth the things that you might not think as legitimate callings. I'm really good at deep conversations. I really am skilled at evaluating the deeper meaning of movies or books or whatever. I'm really good at, I love new languages. Those are all weird kind of things. And that's why we want you to come up with maybe 100. And then we want you to start circling the ones that make you feel fulfilled. It was really fairly recently that I realized one of the things I enjoy the most is being a culture changer. Well, that's a kind of obscure thing. You don't write it as a list of skills or whatever. But why did I like at the camp that I worked at changing kind of this mom and pop camp operation to a really thriving, exciting youth program? It's because it needed me to change the culture. I did that with pickleball. I've done that with a number of things, and I realized, oh, that's the skill. Well, that takes organization, that takes leadership, that takes teaching, that takes motivation, that takes coaching, that takes guiding. Those are all my skill packages. But what is it that is really closely tied to my calling is culture changing. But if I didn't list all those things, I wouldn't say, well, what's the common denominator of all of those things? I also saw that the common denominator was I was almost always leading, and it was almost always in a listen and then let's do it. Because I'm a very hands-on teacher, right? I want them to do it more than I want them to know it, because
I'm that way too.
I believe if people do things, they are
They
really
remember it.
knowing things, and if they do them, I can tell what they're getting and what they're not getting real quickly,
Because
and
you can see it, you can watch it.
they become way more teachable. If I
Yeah.
teach somebody how to raft and I show them up on a whiteboard, which we did on certain rapids, we showed them on a whiteboard how you're going to raft this rapid. It's all theoretical. And then when they get in there and they do it right 2/3 of the way, and then they do it wrong, they're very teachable, especially if they're both flipped,
Right, right.
or even if they didn't hit the chute that
We
they
might as well
wanted
watch
to.
them do it. Yeah.
Right. And now they become way more teachable now. And I also realize that when I reteach something after they've done it, there's
It
some
means so much more.
some lights that go on that they did not even understand the concept of what I was saying before. So
We have a noisy
we have a
blue
stellar
jay.
jay that's kind of giving
And
us
we've got
some
more birds over
applause.
here that are being noisy, but they're cute.
Yeah.
So
I think one of the challenging things is when somebody has a job description where they don't have a particularly good skill in it. Now this becomes difficult if they don't realize. So many people in America can relate to this. Is you've sat in a church and you've heard a pastor drone on and on for 35, 40, 45 minutes, and you cannot, for the life of you, you cannot figure out what they're talking, what's their
what are your
main point. And we had one particular pastor, and Julie and I would be driving home and say, what do you think he was
What did
talking?
we get out of that message? What was the point of it?
And
I'm not sure.
Here's the problem: is somebody, because they've been appointed pastor, thinks that they're a good teacher and thinks that they're a good motivator, and often they're not. But they could be better if they just said, I need to get a skill package.
I need help with this.
Yes. Yeah. Many people have been thrust into a job situation where they're managing people. And what's the worst, or what's the thing that you always hear from employees? Oh, my manager is such a flake, or such a jerk, or such
so distant from us.
Yes,
we can't relate to him.
Thinks they're above us or whatever. And probably in business, there's more classes on management than anything else, because there's some skills that are related.
Not so much with the church.
Not with the church, and I mean, in some of those business situations, people don't.
That's true.
It's checking off a box to learn it.
I hired you, just do your job. You don't
or
need to
they say, take
people.
this class, and they say, now I want you, they should get some coaching. I want you to listen to what they say about affirmation and evaluation.
Yeah, that's another thing. I think to hone your skills and abilities in whatever you're trying to do in your job, if you actually are open to having critiques and evaluations and put your ego aside for a while, it just makes such a huge difference in showing even your coworkers and employees and congregation in a church that you're willing to grow and learn and change and be humble. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah, no.
It's a strength.
Well, and giving good instruction 20 years ago is different than giving good instruction to the student today.
Right.
Because it's a different student. So if you were a good teacher 20 years ago, you may not be that great a teacher today unless you're revising your skills.
And one thing that I was so nervous to teach a class when I first started teaching, but in our student teaching practicum, we had to have evaluations constantly. And that taught me something. Oh, I can actually ask the students, how am I doing? Where do I need to improve? It's humbling, but oh my gosh, the connection that we made very quickly just by asking them, how am I doing? What should I do to change? It really made my teaching better and made our rapport better. They felt like, wow, this teacher actually is open and honest and willing to put her ego aside. It's amazing. And I know pastors could do that too.
Yeah. skills can always be sharpened,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's one of the things that's the difference between some of the things that we're talking about. Your personality, yes, you can highlight the positives and diminish the negatives, but skills are all about sharpening
Mm-hmm.
your tools,
Keep
right?
growing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things is no matter what your calling is,
Mm.
you can become more skilled and more intentional. One, by listening to coaches. Two, by listening to your audience or the people that you're giving your gift to.
Mm-hmm.
Three, by doing some self-evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
Four, by just reading about whatever you are. Every time I
Yeah.
read something about purpose or calling or anything like that, it gets interjected into my teaching because it makes me well, it challenges something that I maybe kind of, oh, this is the main thing here.
Mm-hmm.
Challenges me to think about what is a different
Right.
way of looking at things. So
if we happen to be speaking to any employers or bosses out there, what are some things that you would recommend to them as far as our whole Quests workshop and our course?
yeah, well, a few different things. I think knowing the personality of the people on your team is really important. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a skill, is knowing
Mm-hmm.
who is on my
Yeah,
team.
yeah.
And who is on my team is determined more by their personality than anything else. Then it is nice to know their story. So
Right, right.
getting people to share their story,
Which you do
I
as a
do
boss
a little bit
every week.
casually. We ask people to share 3 C's, something that they're, and this is not related to work, something that they're celebrating, something that they're concerned about, and something that they're concentrating on. So you get a little bit
We learn a lot about
deeper.
our employees with
Yeah,
just those questions.
and because they're tired of saying the same question every time, or the same, in some ways, light answer every time, then we get a little bit deeper. And as we share more deeply about something that we're going through, then they share more deeply. So that's good. But I think also saying I want to be whatever my position requires me to be, whether that's a communicator or a coach or a cheerleader or whatever. I want to be the best that I can. And so where are some books? What are some courses that I can take?
Where's a coach that we can talk
The
with?
one thing about skills is, and this is different than most of the other parts of Quest, is the skill is the thing that you can sharpen most. And so you should have, and you should really look at your toolbox and say, what part of my toolbox is getting a little dull? And if it's getting a little dull, then what can I do to sharpen
if I
it?
see too many of my students in my classroom yawning, I might think, what's going on here? I should figure
Yeah.
out what's making them fall asleep.
Or can we do something to get everybody walking around
Yeah.
that will also
Let's wake them up.
teach a point, you know, or
which is why so many of my classes, I have the students dress up as different characters in history and get up, walk around, go
do
on field
dramatic
trips.
things. Yeah, because they become engaged, right? So
But
that's
pastors too, I think, could pay attention to a few yawns and nodding heads and just say, I think I should change my method of teaching a little
if
bit.
pastors looked at Hollywood or even looked at commercials and say, okay, how do they engage people so quickly, so actively? Even play a 5. I've been in a couple churches where they often play videos or
dress up.
very gripping sequence in a movie.
Yeah.
And then they just jump into their sermon, or they stop their sermon, or they have somebody come up,
or a panel even.
a panel discussion. They have some sort of illustration. They have a goofy experiment that maybe blows up in their face or whatever.
It kept the audience, the congregation engaged.
And I think that's one of the things that Julie and I have a passion for is delivering.
I know it sounds like a pet peeve of ours.
It's delivering good communication in creative ways, because we're tired of the sit down lecture, take notes, and
we're tired of being bored.
Yeah, exactly.
I actually have a strong aversion to being bored. So
yeah, she's really bad. She can make it for about 15 minutes if somebody's not engaged.
So yeah, I won't go into that right now. Can you name anybody that has a certain skill that everybody can relate to? Do you know what I'm asking?
Well, I'll probably point to some people that are very common and you don't think about. The skill of making people laugh, right, is a pretty,
Which I cannot do.
yeah.
I can make myself laugh, and I do that in my classroom, and then my kids just laugh at me.
But I mean,
You're better,
I think
yeah.
of Jerry Seinfeld
Yeah.
as here's somebody who has just taken the art of observing kind of weird things or weird phrases or whatever, and he
Small,
just
random
can
things.
twist them in such a way that you go, man, I've never thought of that. And not only is he a great stand-up comedian, but he probably had one of the most popular TV shows on TV, and it was so quirky, but so we could relate to it to some extent, that he took a skill of making people laugh and he made a lifestyle.
So most comedians who do that, they instantly make themselves more relatable by picking something that we all can relate to as something that annoys us or that we all can laugh at or that we hate.
Yeah. Sometimes your skills come out of difficult times. I think of Dave Ramsey.
Yeah.
He's famous for helping people get out of financial hardship and turning their life around and making it so finances become a legacy rather than an anchor for their life. Well, he was bankrupt very early in his life, made some poor financial decisions, leveraged a lot of money, and went into debt, became bankrupt, told himself, I'm never going to do that again, put together a program to help people understand their money, and then simplified it, and simplified it. And now he's extremely skilled at helping people. And I'm sure this is his calling.
Yeah.
Whenever you hear him talk or interview
very
people,
passionate about it.
It's his calling is to help people get out of. And what I like about it is he's got a very outgoing personality, but he can be very soft when people are really in difficult finances. And then he can be very celebratory when people have gone through a 5-year program where they've really turned their life around financially because of that. It's a skill. So his life story includes a bankruptcy, which you would think, okay, this guy has no business teaching anybody about finances. But he knew enough to say, this doesn't have to be as hard as we're making it.
Yeah.
And he gives people very simple principles. He calls them baby steps. And he's got 7 of them. And if you take yourself through these 7 baby steps, especially if you're a young person, you'll be set for the rest of your life.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, are we wrapping it up right now?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this has been, I hope this has been helpful for you because a lot of people may not look at their skills and abilities very seriously, or they may overlook a lot of them as pointing to your calling. So if you really, I think, humble yourself and actually look at some skills and abilities that you have that you may not even want to believe you have. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's why we want you to put 100 down, is because when you're doing that, you have to be almost stupid about it. Just list, oh, well, I'm good at organizing the kitchen, okay, put it down to get yourself to 100. And then we're going to say, okay, now start highlighting the ones that you're passionate about. Here's the other thing I'll say that's interesting about skills is it's going to become redundant. When you start listing skills, you're going to look at your story and you're going to say, oh, yeah, I was using those skills. I didn't even recognize those as skills. And then you're going to look at your personality and say, oh, I can see why I like those skills. And then we're going to look at your true heart passion, and we're going to ask you, okay, which of these skills is really fulfilling to you? Which of them really gets your juices going? And then we're going to put it all together in your selfless gift, and we're going to say, which ones are you going to want to put in a package and continually give to people, right? So there's this boy, I can't think of the guy's name, but he's a famous chef. And now he goes to war-torn areas and he puts together these kitchens. He's famous, so people give lots of money, and he gives people hearty meals in the hardest, most desolate time of their life. So he's taken his skill, he's taken his abilities, and he said, I am going to take that to the most war-torn areas that I can
I don't even know
possibly
who
get
you're talking
into.
about. I didn't know about this.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
he's famous, and many of the people that are listening will know. I wish I
Jose
had his name,
Andres
because he's
of
just a
World
great
Central
example
Kitchen.
of- It's a great example of taking a skill and turning it into a calling and giving it away.
Wow. And sharing it with the world, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, next time we meet in a podcast, we're going to be talking about the T in our Quests acronym, which stands for True Heart Passions.
And we're going to put and core values.
And core values? Okay.
Yeah.
Good. And then we're almost through all of our acronym and all the letters in our quests, and then we'll hit the last one, which is selfless gifts, but you call it something else or not?
No, I add to it. I say selfless, supportive, and strengthening gifts.
Okay.
So that's just definitions of the selfless part. Yeah.
We covered a lot about selfless gifts in this episode, so you kind of know what we're going to talk about in that episode as well. But the next one will be about our true heart passions, your true heart passions. So I think that will be really, really fun and interesting to find out what you're passionate about. That's another thing. If you feel like writing little notes, even in a chat with us, and telling us what your skills and abilities are that maybe you didn't realize, or anything else that you've discovered from listening to us, that would be fun. And if you're watching us on YouTube, send us a little note saying what you've learned and maybe what you would like us to talk about, how we can help you find your calling, maybe through this medium. When you're not in person, we're just trying to figure out how to help you from a distance. And if you let us know exactly what you're looking for to help you find your calling, that would be helpful for us.
Yeah, and don't forget to hit subscribe to this to continue to get these. We intend to do interviews with people at some point.
If you have found your calling, we would really like to talk to you.
Or even people that are looking for their calling.
Right, because we would love, actually, we have to figure out how to do this, but we'd love to actually coach you over live video or a podcast somehow. We'll figure out how to do that. A podcast would be easier, but if we're getting you on video, we'll have to figure that out. But I know it can be done, and that would be really fun, because then our broader audience can listen to an actual coaching session.
Right.
Yeah, that's our hope. Okay, so thanks for joining us today, and we hope that you will continue to live your best life.
There we go.
We want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Today's episode of Your Best Life was brought to you by True North Quests, helping you discover your calling so you can live a life filled with purpose. Find out more at tnadventures.org, where you can book an appointment with a calling coach, learn about upcoming True North Quest workshops, and more. And by Marble Mountain Kennels, where exceptional Labrador retrievers are bred and trained for adventure, companionship, and service. Visit mmkennels.com to meet your new best canine friend. And by Julie's Creative Classroom, providing fun educational games and digital products for students in Julie's online Creative Classroom TPT Teachers Pay Teachers store. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, remember your best life starts with knowing your calling and finding your true north.